Good morning, I'm Elizabeth Hashagen. Welcome to our live Coping in the Crisis special report. This morning, we're speaking with another coronavirus survivor, a Long Island mom. Now Diana Barrett has big plans to help others who are diagnosed with COVID-19. Now, just a reminder, you can submit your questions for Diana right now. Just head to our social media pages to submit them, and we're going to be asking Diana. But for those of you who are meeting you for the first time, thanks so much for joining us this morning. And how did you first learn that you were positive?
Well, I woke up with symptoms that were not subtle at all. 102 fever. I felt like I had an anvil on my chest. And I had been tracking the virus pretty carefully. I'm not a germaphobe, but I am a news junkie. And so it seemed odd because nobody in my area had yet been diagnosed, or only a couple in all of Nassau County. But I realized immediately that the symptoms lined up with those of COVID-19, and I went to get tested, and it was not an easy process. But after a couple of days of pushing my hardest, I did get tested and got a positive result on March 18th.
Wow. So now Jen wants to know, did you have to go to the hospital or did you stay home the whole time?
No. I was very lucky, but I'm also in the vast majority of people. 90% of people will have experiences very similar to mine. I never even came close to having to go to the hospital. I was able to treat myself at home with Tylenol and Gatorade. But obviously, if anyone is having trouble breathing, you do need immediate medical attention.
Henry wants to know the types of symptoms that you had: regular cough, fever, tiredness, and also added, thank God that you are recovering.
Yes, I'm fully on the other side. I can go into some of my symptoms. I had terrible gastro issues, an unrelenting headache, nausea. I had a respiratory infection, which thankfully cleared up quite quickly. But don't rely too much on any one individual's symptoms, because I'm seeing that there's a real variety from person to person. There's almost like a constellation of possible symptoms you could have with this virus, and each person has a different subset. So look to see whether your symptoms fall into the larger group of the universe of symptoms rather than comparing to any other individual. And if you think you're sick, assume that you're positive and self-isolate immediately.
So now I want to talk a little bit about what happened once you reached that benchmark of time in the house and went out to find out whether or not you had fully recovered. Talk to me about what you've done.
So while I was in isolation, I started a group called Survivor Corps. Right now, it is an open group on Facebook. Anyone can join because we are all affected. Within 2 weeks, we are, I believe, at 24,000 members and growing quickly. Our website will launch today. And we are listing a daily updated list of every way that we as survivors can give back to science and research and participate in every medical study, every research program going on. And so I just got the all clear that I am finally negative for the virus. I'm positive for the antibodies. And as the icing on the cake, I'm a universal donor. So this afternoon, I'm heading to the New York Blood Bank and donating my plasma. Each donation can save 3 to 4 lives, and you can donate every 7 days.
Now, is that what you're hoping to do through Survivor Corps, is to connect the people who have recovered with the scientists?
That's we have multiple long-term missions, but that is our immediate mission, because every science lab in America has turned on a dime to rededicate themselves to study COVID-19, every biotech company. But what they need are survivors, because the answers to so many of the questions about this virus, how long we shed it for, the methods of transmission, etc., those answers lie in the bodies of our survivors. And we needed to create an efficient system because people want to help. People want to donate to science, and we have no time to waste.
Now, what are you seeing when you're going through the posts of the people that are on there? Are you seeing, kind of a resounding answer or question?
So I'm seeing a lot of things. First of all, I'm seeing matches, individual matches being made from donors from people whose loved ones are in need of plasma. I just saw the most heartwarming post from somebody who just last night posted that she was negative for the virus, positive for the antibody. This was her blood type, and she would be willing to go anywhere. Who needs her?
Oh, wow.
I mean, that is incredible. So the outpouring of volunteerism is just staggering. But we're also seeing some other issues come up that are concerning from a policy level, and ultimately the health ramifications. We're seeing a lot of people go to be tested for plasma at the 14-day from symptom mark, which is the current guidelines. They're passing through all of the hoops. These are people who did get originally positive diagnoses, and I'm seeing the same story over and over and over again. They still have the virus in their system. Right now, the CDC guidelines are telling us that we can release ourselves from quarantine after 72 hours from symptoms. There's a major disconnect because the only people who are getting retested are the ones going to give plasma. And at the 14-day mark, they are being told to go back into quarantine and get retested at day 21, where they're often now coming back clear. But the CDC guidelines do not seem to be based on the actual medical science that we're seeing, the actual stories that we're seeing. And that could lead to a major wave of reinfection, especially considering we have an entire country on a virtual lockdown. We need to really review those standards. People are trying to follow the rules, and they are following the rules, but the rules don't seem to be, they seem to be woefully inadequate.
Okay, Karen is asking, when you recover from the virus, can you hug your family that live in the same house?
I took a very conservative approach because I was very nervous about those guidelines, and so it was not until I followed the isolation. I followed the most conservative quarantine rules that were out there. I was in isolation for 18 days, and the very first thing I did when I got out of my room was to hug my family. Mm-hmm. But I did remain quarantined in my home until I got a fully negative test on the virus.
And your husband was also positive, right?
Now. I'm sorry?
Your husband was also positive, correct?
Yep, my husband got it from me, presumably, and had a much more mild case than I did. His lasted for about 72 hours beginning to end, and he will be having his antibodies tested today. So I'm very curious to see whether a mild case like his will result in enough antibodies to provide some degree of immunity going forward.
Jennifer wants to know, how did you keep your kids from getting the virus?
They both got it.
Oh, they did?
But they got such mild versions. I believe my son had it in late February, before everyone was on the lookout for it. And my daughter got it right after I did, and at the same time my husband did, so clearly got it from me. But she had symptoms for she's 13 years old, she had symptoms for about 24 hours. Thank God it does not seem to be affecting children in the same way that it's affecting adults.
So how did you take care of everybody in your house?
You have to just have faith that you have done a good job to raise strong enough children who can weather the storms, and we had to go through a storm, and they weathered it beautifully.
Wow. Jada wants to know, did you take any type of immune boosting supplements before you were diagnosed?
No, absolutely not. I've not seen any medical science that confirms that any supplement will protect you from this, or really anything other than staying home will protect you. But I do want to emphasize that I was going to yoga 3 times a week. I am quite fit. I keep an extremely healthy diet. And moreover, a year ago, I was chest high in the Ganges River photographing the world's largest gathering of humanity, and I didn't even need a Pepto-Bismol. And I was one of the first people in Nassau County to be diagnosed with this. Other than staying home, that is really your best method to protect yourself from this virus.
Annalisa wants to talk about the recovery timeline. She said her husband is on day 11 and still has so much chest pain.
Yes. Again, it can vary so much. Please head over to our Survivor Core group, and it is open to everybody. There are many, many survivors, but there are a lot of people on there who are suffering through it right now. But the good news is that in a couple of weeks, they will be survivors. But this virus does last longer than you realize or than you anticipate. And it's a bit comforting. I didn't realize that when I got it because I was on the early end of the curve. But it's important to, if you have a longer deadline in mind, it's not quite as stressful, and know that it's going to be a little bit of a one step forward, one step back process for a while until you're back feeling yourself.
All right,
So
quickly, Shelley wants to know how long you were contagious for.
The science is out on that. As far as I know, again, until Monday night when I got the absolute free and clear that I was free of the virus and positive for the antibodies, I was assuming that I was positive, and I recommend that everyone do the same. The best thing you can do is act as if you were already infected, and every single person you infect is either your best friend or your grandmother.
Christina wants to know how she can get tested again. Do you know that?
Go to our Survivor Core group. We keep a list at the top that's updated daily of every program going on in America. For some of them, you do need to have had a positive diagnosis. For others, you don't. But right now, there is no mass available antibody testing. I am counting the days, the hours, however long it takes until we have that, because we are going to need that on a mass scale. So right now, the only people who are getting retested are the ones who are participating in these programs.
Okay. All right. So we're going to continue to talk with Diana straight ahead. And remember, we do want to hear from you. So you can submit your questions right now on our social media pages. And we're going to continue our conversations. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our live Coping in the Crisis special report. This morning we are talking with a COVID-19 survivor. Diana Barrett was sick for weeks, but she has since recovered and has now founded Survivor Core. And she's trying to unite survivors and connect them with research institutions so their antibodies can, be used to potentially save the lives of others. Now remember, you can send in your questions right now on Facebook and we will answer them in real time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So can you just talk us through, I know today you're going to, make a donation in Manhattan. Talk to me about what that process was like to be able to donate your plasma.
So it's very simple. And it also, I want you to know, for those of you who are home, who are sick and lonely and scared, look forward to being able to do this in a few weeks, because it is the most inspiring thing in the world. Every plasma donation can save 3 to 4 lives. I mean, who has that opportunity in a lifetime? You can be a superhero. So I got the virus. My body built up the naturally built up antibodies to this novel virus to fight it off. A lot of people were not that lucky. Convalescent plasma, which is the technical term for it, is the extraction of my plasma, which is nothing more than like going to the Red Cross and giving blood. They can then extract those antibodies and give them to the patients who were not able to create that sort of internal hazmat suit on their own. So we list a daily updated list of studies on the Survivor Core group on Facebook, which will soon be a website later today. And what I did was I was the very first participant, number 0001 at Columbia University's program to recruit survivors to donate their blood and plasma. I had to be screened in order to make sure that I no longer had the virus in my system, that I was positive for the antibodies. And as soon as I got the all clear on that on Monday night, the very first thing I did was I called the New York Blood Center and made an appointment. I'll be going there this afternoon, and then that plasma will be rerouted to Columbia University. And because I'm a universal donor, which only 5% of people are, and as my doctor said it, my plasma is basically liquid gold right now, because the people who are suffering and who have rarer blood types will be able to get mine.
Which is amazing. Deborah wants to know, how did you get the antibody testing?
Right now, again, I am waiting with bated breath for this antibody testing to be widely available, and we keep on hearing reports that it is imminent. But until it's here, it is frustrating to say the least. The only way right now to get tested for the antibodies is by being a participant in one of these plasma donation studies.
Okay, Phil and Ellen want to know if you believe there's a lot of false negative tests happening. They say they're so sick with fever, shortness of breath, chest tightness, GI issues, but the test came back negative for COVID-19, but positive for pneumonia. But he never had pneumonia in his life, never been this sick, still coughing 17 days later. Your thoughts?
Look, I'm not a doctor, nor do I even play one on television, but I am seeing the stories of we have, almost 20, I think we're over 24,000 members. So I'm reading people's stories all day long, and I am seeing a lot of reports, especially from early on before the test technique had been perfected, or I don't even know if it's at the point of perfection now, but before it was refined. And if you are having symptoms that mimic the symptoms of COVID-19, despite whatever testing you might have had, please assume that you are positive. And self-quarantine, self-isolate. You do not want to take the chance of spreading this virus. It is so contagious. And you're best off just assuming that you have it. Look, we have nowhere to go right now anyway. So you're not missing out on anything.
Right, and then later on, you can take that blood test and find out if it was in fact a false negative, and then be able to donate if your body made those antibodies.
100%. Right now, the testing has really moved to the antibody test, away from the diagnostic testing, because we just didn't do it well enough and in time. So we're going to have to get these answers retroactively. And if there are studies out there that you can participate in, even without a positive diagnosis, if you've had the symptoms and you've been exposed to somebody who had COVID-19. So not every study is demanding a positive diagnosis right now.
So Christopher wants to know, have you been told whether or not you can get the virus again?
That is a matter that is up for a lot of debate right now. I am going with Dr. Fauci, as I do on most things, and there's no reason to believe that this virus acts in any other way than any other virus. To do that research.
Right, so they can study it.
And provide those answers.
Sure. Susan wants to know what your blood type is.
AB, baby.
It's the old science class, right?
You know what? I had done it's true. I had learned it originally during a 7th grade science experiment, and I was lucky enough to have that confirmed. I was not basing it on my 7th grade science class, but I was very pleased to get the information confirmed.
Absolutely. All right, we are going to continue our conversation and continue to get you the answers that you need at this time. You're watching Coping in the Crisis Special Report here on News 12. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us here at News 12. We are once again speaking with Diana, who is a survivor of COVID-19 and who has recovered from the virus and really made it her mission to connect other survivors so that they can help the medical researchers out there who are trying to really unlock all the clues that have been given. So what would you say your takeaway is from having recovered from this virus?
My biggest takeaway is that we, as a team of survivors, and we are a rapidly growing number. I mean, unfortunately, there have been so many people infected, and we are hearing all of the horror stories, and I don't want to take away from any one of those. I've lost count of the deaths of people I know and the people I know who they love. So I don't want to take away from that, but I also do want to remind you that 90% of people will have experiences like mine. And you're looking at the face of a healthy survivor, fully on the other side, no symptoms, no virus in my blood, but we have superpower skills in our bodies. And if we can rise as a team and join together and support the medical community in every possible way we can truly help stem the tide of this pandemic. And so if that hope, just remember, if you're home and you're sick and you're scared, in a couple of weeks, you're going to be able to have superpowers. You're going to be a superhero going out there and saving lives. And if that is not a motivating force, I don't know what is.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Diana, and thank you all for sending in your questions. I'm Elizabeth Hashagen. We have the very latest on the coronavirus pandemic here on News 12. Straight ahead.